welcome back for project number 2 of my Pinterest inspired recreation project. And we're going to talk about this really interesting dress. It's made from fabric that's storybook covers. It's really interesting. I love the shape, it's definitely me, but not so much the storybook covers. But it gave me a really interesting idea, and that was to use upholstery squares. And when I was on Facebook Marketplace, there was a lady who was selling a box of them for 10 bucks. So I bought 20 bucks worth, and I'm going to make it burgundy. Look at all these beautiful squares of beautiful fabric. I'm going to use this just as a guide for the skirt because I like how the dress is gathered. But I'm going to make the top like this. It's got a lining, and I like my things sleeveless. Now, in order to use upholstery swatches like this, there's a lot of prep work that goes into getting them ready. Step 1, taking all these books apart and sorting through a literal mountain of swatches to find all the burgundy pieces that I could. And when I was done sorting through everything, these are the burgundy pieces that I found. Step 2. Now on all these swatches, they have paper backing, obviously, to show you what the description is of each of these pieces of fabric. So you have to peel off all this paper. Sometimes it's going to come off really easy, and sometimes it's not. These swatch books sat in somebody's garage for a while, so they smell kind of musty and old. But it's all polyester fabric, and so it's washable. So step 3, once this has been soaking for a while, you're going to find that this paper backing comes right off, and it's going to help to lift a lot of that glue residue that might be remaining on it. And now it's ready for the washing machine. And when they were done, I hung them up to dry. Step 4. Once all my pieces were dry, I used my serger machine to serge off all of the edges and to cut off any areas where the glue residue just did not want to come off. I decided to work on this dress backwards. I was very anxious to see if I had enough pieces for the skirt, so I set aside my favorite pieces I wanted to use for the top, and I got started. For the skirt, I pinned the front and back pieces together to check for an approximate fullness and for length. Now, when I envisioned this dress in my head, I wasn't thinking of symmetrical rows of blocks like the storybook dress in the picture. I was thinking more of a patchwork look with different sized squares randomly placed all over the skirt. And do you know what that translates into when all sewn together? A really, really bad looking craft project. For my second attempt, I knew I had to put all these pieces into rows, yet I didn't cut them into symmetrical squares of all the same size. I just left them in 3 different rows, 1 large, 1 medium, and 1 small. And after I did that, I started to notice a few pieces that really stuck out like sore thumbs, like this green one and this white one. And after removing them, along with some other pieces that were just too gold, this is what I was left with. So I decided to take a break and work on the top. So I'm roughly a size 10 in the bust and a 12 at the waist, and this pattern is very simple with a nice front and back dart at the waistline, which will help to give me a little bit of shape. And with my seam allowance, I'm cutting myself a size 12 in this pattern. I then translated my top pieces onto some muslin, and just like my skirt, I sewed random swatches together, so when the front and back pieces were cut out, they looked like this. I also made the mistake of not sewing my muslin pattern together to do a test fit for the top. This was bad, times 10. At this point, I realized that all my pieces in my rows had to look like this. Very nice and neat and symmetrical. I also realized I wasn't going to have enough swatches to finish my skirt. So I went back to the lady I originally got these swatches from, and I bought another box full. After salvaging what I could from the first top and adding in the new pieces from the new box of swatches I got, this is my result. 3 very nice, symmetrical, neat rows of squares that when sewn together, all of my seams will line up. And here's how my skirt panel turned out. I've got my pieces into 3 rows, just like the top, with the longest pieces at the bottom to allow for the hem. I wanted to note that I restitched all of the sewn seams where I cut, so the seams are locked at the ends and won't pull apart. I've also serged all of the edges so the fabric doesn't fray, and I have my lining pieces cut, so I can now start putting my dress together. And I do that by sewing in the front and back darts and the side seams together. Now I'm ready to sew the lining to the top. I start by sewing the upper front and back top edges together, as well as around the armhole opening, leaving the shoulder and center back seams open. Next, I trimmed all of the sewn seam allowances down to about 1/4 inch and clipped all of the curves until I can pull them into a straight line. While the top is still inside out, I sew the row of understitching on the lining side so that the lining lays flat and doesn't show. Now I turn the top right side out and press all of the sewn edges flat. Before I go on, I wanted to show you what the darts look like. They hide nicely in the seams in the back and only show a bit at the top on the front darts. To sew the shoulders, I first sew the outer fabric with the right sides together, and then I turn the shoulder inside out and sew the lining together. With my top all finished, I was ready for a fitting. I felt overall it fit me pretty well. There just wasn't enough definition under the bust line, so I decided to take in the front darts just a bit. I also went ahead and held up the skirt panel to see what it would look like with the top, because I was still trying to decide if I wanted the skirt to have gathers or pleats. Either way, I really liked the way the dress was coming together. As you can see, taking in that little bit has given me some much needed definition under the bust. Now I can remove the original stitching line from the bust darts and press them open. Okay, so now my top is all finished and it's onto the skirt. I did make the sash. I pinned it to the sides, I pinned it to the back, wrapped it around, and I really didn't like it. But I know I need something in the middle to break up all the patterns. And I think what I'm gonna do is make a belt, something that's about maybe 1 inch wide. And now it's time for the skirt. I've already gone ahead and put my lining pieces together. I left an opening here for the zipper. I have my edges serged to stop for the fraying. The only thing I haven't done anything with is the hem, but I'm probably going to give it a rolled edge because that's a really super fast way to hem a lining of a garment. I've also gone ahead and sewn the center back seam of my skirt together and left the opening for the zipper. Now I've decided that I'm going to gather the skirts onto the dress. I thought about using pleats, but I really didn't like it when I tried to pin it together with the top. So I'm now going to run the gathering stitches on the top edge of my skirt and the lining.
And here's what it looks like with the skirt on. I am so in love with the way this has turned out. And now it's time to put in the zipper. Now, I know if you do a search on YouTube, you're going to find a lot of videos on how to sew in an invisible zipper. But the way they're going to teach you is that you put the zipper in first, and then you're going to close up the bottom of your garment afterwards. I'm going to teach you how to sew in the invisible zipper a little different. And as you can see, I have very defined lines that needed to line up first before I put my zipper in. And to sew your invisible zipper in this way, you just need to make sure that the zipper bottom comes down past your seam opening about 2 inches. This is also going to help you if you're going to replace a zipper in an existing skirt that you have, or if you're going to try to take in the seams down the sides and you have an invisible zipper there. Because you're going to want to remove your zipper and then alter the bottom of it first and then put the zipper back in. So let's get started. Now we all know that when you sew in an invisible zipper, the first thing you're going to do is unzip it and go and press the teeth flat. So let's do that. Something else I'm going to teach you how to do is I'm not going to use a zipper foot like most everyone will teach you to use when it comes to an invisible zipper. I have actually found that the best way to sew in an invisible zipper is to use your regular presser foot. The reason I do that is because when I'm sewing, I want to get as close to the teeth as I possibly can. And by using your regular presser foot, it's going to press the teeth open and you're going to be able to get right down in that groove as close to the teeth as you possibly can. So now we're ready to put this in the dress. I'm going to line this plastic piece right here at the top, and I'm going to pin this zipper in place first. All the way down to where just past the opening. Now, when you get to the bottom of your opening, you're going to want to go ahead and sew down about 1/2 inch past your opening. That's why your zipper end needs to come down about 1 inch or 2 past your opening. It's also going to help when we do the other side to not get that little pucker that usually happens when you sew in the invisible zipper, and why a lot of people put the zipper in first and then close up the garment underneath. So you can see I have now gotten very close to my teeth. Now that my zipper is in, since I have all these seams that I need to line up with the other side, the first thing I'm going to do is zip up my zipper. I'm going to take my chalk and I'm going to mark all the places where there is a seam that I need to line up. And I'm going to unzip my zipper like this. To avoid the pucker at the bottom down here, what you're going to do is you're going to leave your zipper zipped about this much. You're going to lay the fabric down on top of the zipper. You're going to pinch with your thumb and your finger, and you're going to flip this over like this, and you're going to grab both the seam allowance and your zipper, and you're going to put a pin right here to hold it in place. You're going to take and unzip your zipper all the way and pull the zipper tab out the other side. That's also why you need to have your zipper about 1 inch or 2 past your closed seam. Now what you're going to be able to do is stitch this flat, and it should eliminate any puckers. I'm going to take and line up all of my seams at my chalk lines
and pin them in place. And now you're ready to sew this half of the zipper in. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna flip your zipper tab up like this, and you're gonna give it a pull. And when you flip it over, your seam should lie nice and flat. And when I zip up my zipper, all of my other seams are lined up as well. Now's when I use my zipper foot. I've got my dress flipped inside out, and I'm going to flip this over and attach my lining. Now obviously I don't want to catch the teeth and I don't want to get super close, because as I zip up the zipper in my dress, I don't want the lining to get caught. So I will be using my zipper foot so I can stay about 1/4 of an inch away from my teeth. Now we flip the dress right side out. And there you have it, all done.
And lastly, I am sewing on a hook and eye closure at the top. I enjoy hand sewing, and this is just a small detail that gives your garment a finished look. I have also added a couple pieces of boning to the sides of the dress because I noticed that when I tried the dress on, it would seem to collapse a little bit as I wore it. And I like my things nice and fitted, and the boning really made a difference in keeping it flat. Now we've come to the hem, and I'm sorry, but I did not film myself doing one last fitting to measure my hem. But I was very happy with the length once I pinned under about 3 inches for the seam allowance. This made the bottom row roughly 8 inches long. Like I said previously, I'm hemming the lining of the dress with using a rolled edge from my serger machine. So I'm cutting off 3.5 inches from the bottom. For the top layer, I am hand sewing the hem in place using a blind stitch, where you carefully prick the outer skirt layer by just catching a few threads and then stitching through the hem. As you pull your thread tight, you want to loop back under your first thread, which will kind of lock each stitch into place. And this should not show on the outer side. As I also mentioned, I did not like the sash from the pattern I'm using, and covering this old belt is a great way to repurpose it and make it into something new. For the buckle end, I poked a hole in the fabric for the prong, folded under the sides, and hand stitched the fabric in place.
And now that my dress and belt are all finished, it's finally time for a photo shoot.
Well, there you have it. My dress is all done, and I love the way this all turned out. Now, if you're wondering why I don't have the belt on, I decided I really didn't like it after all. It just seemed to be a little skinny, and it didn't hide the gathers of the skirt, and I've decided I think I need something that is about 2 inches wide, or maybe just wear nothing at all. Thanks again for watching, and if you enjoyed this recreation project, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more projects to come.